Hi, I've put this presentation together to help clarify the requirements for Project 1. Because the forms are too large for the slides, please be sure you've printed a copy of the guidelines and the sample answer so that you can follow along with the explanations. I'll briefly describe the requirements first and then return to each section to provide specific information. This is an application project. It's meant to assess if you understand the crumb elements. The project is assessing what you've learned by how well you apply the information to a professional situation. There are 5 crumb elements that you address: logic, rules, concepts, images, and analogies/cases. For each one, you will provide a description of the element, give an example of where it is used in your work situation, and then describe how you would teach or train someone. The project document has been formatted so that your responses for each element will fit into the cells of the table. Columns E and F have been shaded for a reason. In Project 1, you will complete columns B, C, and D. After I've graded these responses, I will return the document to you. The shading will be removed, and in Project 3, you will use the same document to complete columns E and F. The instructions for Project 3 will be presented later. The most important thing to remember here is written in the header. Do not change the margins, the font size, change the font to bold or italics, or alter the format of the document in any way. Each cell has been pre-formatted, and if you change anything, it may not be usable for Project 3. This is a sample of what the project will look like after you've entered your information. Place your cursor in each cell. Begin entering your response, and the cells will expand to contain the information. Your table will extend across multiple pages, and with 5 elements to describe, you could potentially have a final project of 6 to 7 pages. If you're working on the project at different times, remember to save the document after each entry. Now, let's discuss the specifics of the project. Column B requires a description of the crumb element. This should be in your own words, not copied from the text or any other source. I need to see that you understand the element. Your description should provide enough detail so that someone not taking this course would understand the element. You might want a friend or spouse to read your description before you submit it to see if it makes sense to them. In Unit 1, I described the crumb elements as mind tools that we bring to and apply to daily situations of problem solving, learning, and communicating. For column C, you need to provide an example of where you applied the crumb element. This could be an example of where you teach things like logic, rules, or concepts to your students or trainees. Or it could be an example of where you use the crumb element in your daily work environment. It must be a personal example of your teaching or use, not what others do or how it could be used. In your example, be sure to give the context by describing when, where, how, and why this element is used. Remember that you do not need to use the same example for each element. Chances are we don't apply all 5 tools at the same time to the same situation, so having 5 different examples is desirable. Your MED program is all about education and training. In column D, I'm looking for how you would provide instruction. It must be instruction of what you described in column C. It can't be a different example of teaching the element. Your example in column C may have been one where you already teach or train using the element. But other examples may discuss how the element is used in your work. In this case, think about how you would teach someone else using this element to perform the task you described in column C. You may not have taught anyone yet, So here's your chance to think through your instruction. In both instances, you need to describe how you would teach, not how another teacher or your supervisor presented it, or how professionals recommend it be taught, but how you would do it. For some of the elements, you may be teaching the skill directly, teaching how to reason deductively, teaching the rules to complete a process, teaching a specific concept. But in others, you may be teaching others to use the element to perform another task. For example, you may use cases to compare settings or situations, or you may have them recall images, stored mental pictures of something, to determine features or recall details. You may find in attempting to describe the instruction that you need a better example in column C. So think through the process and be sure what you described in column C is something you can actually teach. Take a look at the sample answer again. Note that the description in column B is not copied from a text or referenced from another source. It's in the writer's own words and is detailed enough to understand the element of rules. The example in column C is from the writer's personal experience and discusses when, where, how, and why the rules are used in making decisions about admissions. Finally, the example in column D describes how the staff is taught to use the rules in the process. It directly describes what the writer does in instructing the staff based on how it is used in column C. There should be consistency as you move across columns B, C, and D. The description in B should be evident in the example in C, which is then taught in column D. The best check on your project before it's submitted is to ask someone else to read it. Give them a copy of the rubric and see how they would score each aspect. It's difficult to be objective when you score your own project, particularly because you thought you were doing everything correct as you prepared each response. So find a willing coworker, and perhaps for the price of coffee and a donut, you can entice them to give you their feedback. If you still have questions or need clarification on any aspect of the project, please post a question on the discussion board forum.